Welcome to Vote 2024 Table Talk, a Milwaukee PBS special. I'm Portia Young. As Election Day nears, the presidential candidates are making their final pitch to voters, especially here in Wisconsin, one of the ultimate toss-up states that could decide the Electoral College. Wisconsin is up for grabs, but not because there's a bunch of independent voters on the fence. It's a state of almost equal polarized parts. It's a snapshot of what's happening across the nation. Americans are more polarized than in the past, and many voters hold deeply negative views of those on the other side of the political spectrum. Just take a look at this word cloud. The Pew Research Center asked people to use a word or phrase to describe the current state of U.S. politics. These are the top answers and not a single positive word in the bunch. The same Pew study also found that Americans say the tone of political debate in this country has worsened. An overwhelming 84% majority of adults say political debate has become less respectful over the last several years. And nearly the same percentage of people say debate has become less fact-based, with too little attention to important issues facing the country. So, with all of that in mind, we thought we would throw a dinner party. Milwaukee PBS has partnered with Marquette University's Civic Dialogues program to bring together small but diverse groups of voters to come to the dinner table, break bread, and discuss important issues. Our hope is to help restore civility to political discourse. In part one of our Table Talk special, we focused on immigration and democracy. For part two, we're serving up a pair of new topics, starting with education. So let's pull up a chair at Engine Company number 3 in Milwaukee's Walkers Point neighborhood, where our voters discuss curriculum, state funding models, and student loan debt forgiveness, among other topics.
I'm Jasleen Gore, a political science student at Marquette University, and I'm excited to facilitate today's conversation on education.
Hi, my name is Selena Chiveste and I am from Milwaukee. I am here to talk about early childhood education and all the great things that come with it.
Hi, my name is Herman Diaz. I'm a father and I am a teacher, and I believe that speaking about education and educational issues are important for our children.
My name is D'Angela Luna. I'm a native of Milwaukee. Education has always been really important to me, and now that I'm raising 3 young girls, I'm super invested in what the future looks like.
My name is Ray Dakins. I am a freshman at Marquette University with a criminology and law studies major, and education is important to me because both of my parents are educators.
Hi, I'm Eric Schlick. I'm from Kenosha, Wisconsin. I'm here as a public educator to talk about education.
Civic Dialogue is organized around one fundamental question. What should we do? Welcome to our Vote 2024 Table Talk on Education. Our goal is to model and elevate healthy civic discussion in this election year. According to a Washington Post analysis, 3/4 of the nation's school-age students are now educated under state-level measures that either require more teaching on issues like race, racism, history, sex, and gender, or which sharply limit or fully forbid such lessons. Who do you think should be primarily responsible for decisions about what is taught in the classroom?
Parents. I mean, there should be input from teachers, but I believe it's parents, it's their children. I come from a conservative household. I am a conservative with liberal views on some things, but I'm a conservative and I feel like that if you're in a public school, yes, there should be input from the teachers and the government, but again, it's public, so it should be the public's view because they're paying tax dollars. And I feel like they should be able to have input on what their children are learning, and they should be able to trust that the system is teaching what they need to learn, and that they should have some input because again, it is their child ultimately.
I respect your opinion, but I strongly disagree with that because I think that if I'm sick, I'm not going to my son's soccer coach to get help. I'm going to the one who is the expert. In this case, it will be the doctor. Teachers are, for the most part, we know, teachers are trained in pedagogies. Teachers don't go into the classroom to teach critical race theory or racism. Teachers go into the classroom to develop critical thinking. And so it's a very thorny issue right now, and I know that it's really hard to have conversations about it, and that's why I value sitting at this table, being able to challenge our opinions. But I think that the experts are the teachers.
I think a lot of it has to do on how you approach certain topics. But in my classrooms, I think everyone should have a voice. As long as you respect everybody and kind of like what we're doing here. We all have different opinions and things. But I think it's how you do it, how you approach it, and how you manage all of this.
So I'm going to say that it should be a decision of the federal government or of the state. A parent, if it is pouring rain outside and the bus is coming, a parent is going to get the rain boots, the raincoat, and the umbrella because they don't want their baby to get wet. How else will they know what the rain feels like? So I think we have to allow teachers to teach. So if it's a history class, it may not all feel like kittens and rainbows, but it is what happened. And it's important, it's really critical. Herman, exactly where I was going in my mind immediately was a teacher's job is not to shield the child from anything that doesn't feel comfortable. That's the parent's job.
When districts adopt curriculum, you have the professionals saying, hey, listen, we do an RFP, request for approval. We get vendors, and then out of those vendors, they narrow it down to probably 2 or 3 or 4 of them that for Wisconsin aligns with Common Core standards. But you have to have curriculum that aligns with state law, right? But any good superintendent should say, listen, here's a curriculum. Let's have a listening session for parents. Let's get them and get their feedback. I do think it has become politicized, but I also think as educators, to combat that is be transparent. I think I will tell you, if school districts that I know around here, the biggest topics that I know are issues right now isn't necessarily the curriculum, is what's in the library books.
Americans and political candidates differ on school choice. That is, using public tax dollars to cover the cost of private school tuition. Which option do you think is best for using those education dollars? Giving money to low-income families so they can pay for their children to go to private school, or giving money to public schools to improve their education?
It's not either or, it's both. I do think, especially when you talk about students who are living in poverty, they should have a choice that's paid for by public dollars. I'm all for that. Yeah. But in the same sense, we should also fund public education. So I think we need to fund both. But why is private education funded at 90% special ed reimbursement and public ed only 30%? That's just, to me, that's where the loss is.
So I'm going to piggyback on what Eric said and agree.
I got you to agree with me. Woo!
Wait, no.
Yeah.
I fully agree.
I know you agree with me.
And sir, you stole my thunder because what I was going to say is, yes, it's not an either or, but a nuanced approach, and we need to triage who needs it when. There's going to be moments when public schools have more kids who need more special services. We need to take that into account. So it cannot be some static standard of it's 90% for private and this for public. No. There needs to be a regular assessment.
I know some private schools and schools that are called choice schools offer great programs. The issue that I have with that is that there is less accountability. So if tax-paying funds go to the state, that they should promote public education.
I agree. I am a product of Milwaukee Public Schools, and I am very proud to say it. Both my sister and I are a product of MPS, and we grew up with a lot of great services. Going back to what I was talking about earlier, the arts, music, a librarian, bilingual education. So yes, I completely agree with you, Herman.
There's a lot of concern about the costs of higher education. Do you support or oppose student loan forgiveness?
So I'm going to talk on this one. College for me was out of the question because I couldn't afford it until I had 2 options: community college or join the Army. And I joined the Army. And the Army, fortunately, pays for my college. I go to Marquette. It pays for my college. Marquette is so expensive. And next year, I had to become an RA, working a job on top of my military duties, on top of being a student, in order to afford to go to a prestigious school like Marquette University. It's unaffordable. So I'm not quite sure on loan forgiveness. I believe that there should be some. I just know that the cost is exponentially high, and it's so hard for people to be able to go to school. And it discourages people from going to college too.
Yes, the cost is astronomical. It's going to become prohibitive for a lot of groups, disproportionately persons of color. But I think that we, as a country, got to figure it out. Because if we want to be relevant in a global economy, we have got to have some college-educated people running around. Loan forgiveness is a step in the right direction. Whether it's 100%, I'm not sure.
I think it would be nice from the state level, since we have so much money in reserves, is to lower the amount of four-year colleges, and I think that hopefully lower the private schools down, because if there's a huge disparity, nobody's going to go to these private schools. And I think that will help. I do agree at the national level, there seems to be movement to pay for a two-year college. I don't know if that's going to come to fruition.
I would like to thank my parents publicly here because without them, I would not have been able to attend Alverno College. I was one of the very few Latino students. There were very few that looked like me. So without my parents putting in their paychecks to put me through college, I would not be here. So I agree. I think we need to come as a country, come up with ideas, come up with a really good solution, so that not just we're opening doors to more than just a few amount of people.
I think that, the nation has to prioritize where and what we're investing in. When we put a lot of money into wars and weapons and all of that, the budget for the Defense Department is huge compared to the budget allocated for education, right? So it should be like a right, and I think if we really want to build a society that flourishes, I think that we just have to maybe make college free,
We now set the table for another group of voters and a new topic. Climate change is the focus of our next Table Talk dinner. The presidential candidates have spent time on the campaign trail talking about oil production, curbing greenhouse gas emissions, and other issues related to a warming planet, even as national polling has found that Americans rank climate change as a lower priority than other ballot issues in this election. But that could easily change with the next natural disaster, energy grid breakdown, or a spike in gas prices. Far too often, when talking about climate change, a key ingredient is missing: solutions. So we made sure it was on the menu at Engine Company number 3, where our next group of diverse voters discussed renewable energy, government regulations, and their hopes for the future.
We're bringing voters from a variety of backgrounds together to talk in conversation. I'm Amber Wachowski, professor of political science at Marquette University. I'm excited to facilitate our table talk on climate change.
The Earth is a community. If we're going to meet those problems well, we can only do it together. Hi, my name is Dale Skaggs. I live on the Lower East Side of Milwaukee, but I also have a small farm up in Door County in the northeastern part of the state. And I'm looking forward to an interesting conversation this evening.
Earth is part of who we are, and that if we're not taking care of the Earth, that is a big problem. My name is Darrell Terrell. I am from Milwaukee. I was born and raised here. And the reason I am interested in climate change, that is a part of who I am.
I think the value that's bringing me here today is humility. I think these are very complex problems.
Hi, my name is Alex Lemke. I'm an attorney. I'm originally from Kenosha, but we live in the Milwaukee area for the last 3 years. I'm here today to talk about climate change as well as potential solutions that we can bring to the Milwaukee area.
What variables are most important, and then be able to decide a logical outcome based off of the truth. Hi, my name is Cedric Berkey. I'm a student at Marquette University, majoring in biological sciences, and I'm very excited to talk about climate change today.
Just getting back to our roots, that connection to nature and how important it was for my ancestors and many ancestors.
My name is Yessi Perez. I am a lifelong resident of the Milwaukee community, Southside born and raised, and I am here today to talk a little bit more about people's interests in climate change and hearing a little bit more about the safety impacts in our community.
Welcome to our Vote 2024 Table Talk on climate change. I think what I gathered from all of you is that climate change is an important issue to you. You think there's a government role. So let's flesh this out a little bit. Like, what would this government role look like? So I'll start first thinking about taxes and providing tax incentives or rebates. Do you support that sort of approach to addressing climate change?
I think that at the moment, there doesn't seem to be an incentive for the private sector to develop heavily or invest heavily, because many of them, and in many ways, I think our own government is not looking to the future or far enough into the future. There does have to be some government involvement, but I think the bulk of it will come from private investors and the private sector in general.
So climate change is a global problem, but I think the way to think of it in government role is how do we get those other countries able to implement these alternative energy sources that are green? So the question is, how do we get these other countries moving in that direction? I think tax incentives have a role in that way to maybe subsidize electric cars.
I wish that more countries will collaborate, better. And I'm gonna say COVID-19 is a good example. Look how fast we got a vaccination. When, all the companies around the world seem like, okay, this is the world's problem. This is the number one thing. We got to get on this, and boom, we did come up with, a solution, okay? It's going to be argued if it's the best solution or not, but at least that energy that's around that particular problem, got noticed, got things done. And somehow, some way, we need to find that type of pattern or that type of path to do it with climate change.
I'd like to, for a minute, take it in the directly opposite direction from global to your own backyard. And Darrell told me about his front yard. He got rid of the grass and he planted ground covers, right?
Right.
And if a couple of billion other people in the world did that, it really would make a difference in how much, gasoline-powered lawnmowers are spewing into the air. And so, we all would like to have some big fix, but it's going to come down to each of us as individual human beings deciding how we're going to live.
The U.S. needs to be willing to be a part and stay a part and do the things that they say they would do in these kind of treaties or global policies, agreements, that kind of stuff. The problem that we have, though, in international affairs is that there's no real enforcement when it comes down to it. And so I do think that incentives, tax incentives, rebates, like those kinds of things, do feel a little bit more achievable. And they feel like something that folks would be able to use to, just in terms of maximizing what we can right now.
Is climate change going to be an important issue to you this election year? Is it going to inform how you vote in November?
I would say it's definitely one of the issues that I'll be looking into for sure. So absolutely.
This might be more true for down ballot kinds of races and local races where I will be looking for folks who say, I want to support policies that will help make change happen in my part of the world where I am. So that's how I'm going to be looking at it mostly. My national level races, It's more about democracy.
Yeah, Cedric, I saw you nodding. How are you thinking about
I mean,
climate change heading into this election?
Of course, it's a huge problem. It's almost horrifyingly massive how big it is, how it affects literally like everything. So obviously, I don't think there's a way. I don't think there's a situation or an occurrence where I would ever not consider it when I'm voting.
I guess I'll be the lone person at the table, but I don't think it'll impact my decision too much. Let's just to put it this way, very disappointed in both top line presidential candidates, and I don't think either one is really that engaged in actually getting to a real solution.
So I'm going to close out this part of the conversation by having each of you finish this sentence. My hope for the future of American politics is
that we start talking to each other about the real issues, not about what some Republican did or some Democrat did, or we will talk about coming up with a solution, a real solution.
And also I'd add on to it just the respect for the governmental institutions that we have, top to bottom. It's not a perfect system, but I think politicians have gotten so far from acting in the manner that they should. For example, senators and congressmen rarely take votes on anything, simply because if you take a vote on something, you have a position, and then your opponent can run against you on that. Yeah. My hope would be we get back to getting those senators into a room, which is it's described as the greatest deliberative body in the world. But I don't know in my lifetime if I've ever actually seen that.
I'm going to keep mine short and sweet, I think. And let me know if I'm phrasing this right. My hope for American politics is genuineness, decisiveness, and action.
It's the science. I mean, the first word that comes to mind is symbiosis, as in there are two groups right now, majority. And in a symbiotic relationship, both get something out and both end up fairly happy. And to everybody's point so far, I think there's too much division to the point where nothing is getting done. Like it's a little bit ridiculous at this point. So like a symbiotic relationship, I think that we have to come together to be able to, again, make the right decisions for the people of this great nation.
We'd like to see the Senate get in a room like this and talk to each other like we're talking to each other. My biggest hope is that the 60% of the people who are in the middle of the country would get together and tell the 20% on either end, you can't get all of the radical stuff you want. Let's talk about how we're going to make this happen. And that's a lot of people with a lot of power. If somehow we could bring that 60% together around this table, we'd make a lot of progress.
What's that saying about polite conversation during dinner? Don't discuss politics or religion at the table. Well, we mostly defied that rule thanks to the guidance of our trained moderators from Marquette University, and no one's appetite was spoiled. And as you'll hear, all of our Table Talk voters enjoyed our pairing of politics and provisions. Clearly, we're all a bit hungry for a healthy debate about the issues, where we can hear new perspectives and sharpen our own beliefs. And a little dessert doesn't hurt either.
So as we're enjoying our dessert,
as we are, wrapping up our conversation,
let's wrap up with some final reflections.
What did you think about our conversation?
What did you guys think about our conversation tonight?
Did anything change for you?
As you think over the last hour, did anything change for you?
How are you walking away from our conversation tonight?
I personally enjoyed these conversations. I think these conversations, open our minds or the way we think. I think the way we handled it, I think it was very beautiful. I think it was a very beautiful conversation.
I went into this with a little anxiety, didn't really know what to expect, and I think I came out of it with some new friends, and I'm just really glad that we were able to have a civil discussion and agree on some level, disagree maybe on some level, but also feel like no one was being attacked. And I think that just like sense of community just really did it for me tonight.
I found it really insightful. I really enjoy hearing different point of views. And the fact that we were able to do so civilly definitely helps me learn, and I feel be able to take what I learned here and apply it to new places, because I feel like that's a problem with most people, is they don't know how to have civil conversations about stuff like this. And it's something that needs to happen more.
If you were to put us all on Twitter, we'd probably be arguing. Let's put it that way, and not in a civil way. But I think just getting us, they're people. We're people, and just being able to see that, and we're not trying to score points. We're trying to figure something out, and I think that's why this is so valuable.
I enjoyed it. I think the diversity of the group is really good. I felt that we left enriched, that we reached a point in the conversation where we were able to push back a little bit and also agree on some of the ideas that we shared. And I think it's just an amazing opportunity to make new friends, and we should do it more.
While we were having dinner, I was already so psyched about this conversation that I said to Amber, I want your autograph. And she said, no. And I handed her my menu and said, come on. And she said, okay, if everybody else signs it, I will too. And everybody did, with nice little notes here. And I'm going to try to find a way to copy this and get it back to everybody, because this has been special.
Right.
Yeah.
Love it.
And who
Love
knows
it.
where this goes from here?
The challenge, if you so accept it, is to go back to your neighborhoods, your communities, do a dialogue dinner.
I like that challenge.
Okay.
Not always the people that you talk to.
Yeah.
Extend that invitation to someone that maybe is on the periphery.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the challenge.
That's going to do it for our Vote 2024 Table Talk special. Milwaukee PBS would like to extend thanks to all of our participants for coming to the table and sharing their deeply held beliefs for a public audience. And a special thanks to Engine Company Number 3 for hosting us. For more information about the upcoming election, including what's on your ballot, head over to myvote.wi.gov. Be safe, stay informed, and don't forget to vote. I'm Portia Young. Thanks for watching.